Okay, hi guys. Welcome to the first Q&A of December. This is typically a Patreon only Q&A, but I decided to make this one, since it's the end of the year, public to my channel. So hopefully we have some people on here that haven't been on before and can ask questions. I'm going to give people a little bit to sign on, and then I'll kind of go through what we're going to cover today. And as always, guys, make sure that you can see me, hear me, drop in the chat that you can, and ask any of your questions along the way or any commentary on anything down in the chat. And we will have a conversation going. So the next 30 minutes are ours. Hopefully, I can give you guys some training advice, motivation, whatever you need this time of year. We kind of cover new things every time we have a live, which is exciting. So you guys go through different issues throughout the year. I know some of you tune in from very different places in the world. So you're dealing with different weather, different circumstances, maybe different holiday break schedules and stuff. So I'm trying to hit things that apply to most people. So again, if you guys are joining me, thank you for coming to this live chat. And for the next 30 minutes, you can ask me whatever you want, preferably related to training and stuff I post videos on, but we can probably go other directions too. So we are going to cover a few topics today. And hi, guys, let me know when you're in the chat. I have a couple things lined up, but otherwise I'll leave it up to you guys. I know when we do a public version of this, it has a lot more questions involved. So, okay. First thing I wanted to talk about just before I'm headed out on a really long trip, I'm going to be gone for about 3 weeks. I wanted to talk about how I build travel workouts, and some of you guys have asked me privately about this, and so I thought I'd just give a general layout for what I do when I'm traveling. Typically, I can expect to have a little bit of space in a hotel room. There might not be a hotel gym or somewhere I'm going to, but if I just have a little bit of space and body weight, what I like to do is first select a time, the amount of time I'm going to work out for. So I will say I'm going to do 30 minutes. And then I'm going to break that up into probably 2 sections. If it was longer, I'd break it into 3 sections. In each section of the workout, I'm going to pick 3 movements, body weight only, and kind of range, different body parts for those. And I'll go through 2 or 3 sets of anywhere from like 10 to 15 reps, or maybe I'm going for time. So an example would be like 30 seconds air squats, maybe 15 push-ups, 20 V-ups, and go through that 3 times with some breaks in there, and then move to the next circuit. That would be a way to compile. That's a really simple way to create something that's all body weight. It's very easy. Movements you're familiar with. You can lift things if you have it, have weights or whatever. But if you don't, very easy to just move and sweat. My main thing when I'm traveling is just do something for my body a couple of times throughout the week, even if it's not every day or my normal schedule. And I typically just feel a little bit more like myself, especially in a new place. Okay. So guys, if you're just joining us, welcome to this live. Typically it's just for Patreon people only, but I wanted to open this up to everybody since it's the end of the year, and whatever advice I can give you guys, hopefully we clear up some questions and stuff today. So first question here. So hi, Holly. Pat says, I'm going to start training for my first 100-miler, but I keep injuring my calf. It's getting harder and harder mentally to even think about running. Any tips on motivation or discipline? There's a lot of people dealing with calf things right now. And I think one of the main issues is people think they know when they're stretching and strengthening their calves, but actually they're not getting that level of work done on a regular basis. So running obviously requires a lot of our whole leg. One, if you're overworking the calf, it might be a form issue where you're pushing off a lot every time you step. I just was working with a girl the last couple months, and that was all she did. She was a former dancer, so everything she did was like a prance, and she pushed off every time. Now we have her working on that pickup method I've talked to you guys about in other videos, where it's a lot more emphasis on the landing right under yourself. So you're using your glutes and quads, and you're not pushing off, springing every time. Now, if you're doing a lot of hill work, obviously you're going to work the calves a bit more because we're on that incline. We have to make up and drop that calf every time we're kissing the ground. But first and foremost, let's check the form if the calves are getting overworked. Second thing, when you're rolling your calves out, you want to make sure there's enough pressure. So a lot of people like foam roll the bottom of their calf, but they don't add that other leg on top. When you do that, you add some weight, can circle the bottom foot. You can work down, up the calf here and really get in there. This creates healthy tissue to then go into your next run or workout with. So it's nice and back to its normal length. But if you go do a big push off run and get everything really tight and short, we're not really rolling out and controlling how we come down in that recovery. We then go back out the next time and we have even shorter muscle tissue to work with. So it's repetitive and then it becomes less healthy. The other thing you can do is 2 minutes each side. I would really say close to every day, drop that heel off a step and really just stretch that calf, let everything hang down, let it lengthen. You'd be surprised how tight probably the back of your knee is, maybe even up to the hamstring. Try that. There's other things we can talk about with ankle mobility, but start with that. Hopefully that helps clear up the calves a little bit. If you're running well and you're taking care of your body, you shouldn't have calf pain, even if you're training for 100 miles. Okay, guys, if you're joining us, welcome. So glad to have you guys here. So I'm going to hit the next one here. What is your favorite way to care for a blister under a callus on the side of the big toe? Yeah, I have this all the time. I would say caring for blister is, the more air you can get to it, the better. If you need to drain a blister, do it. When it's under a callus, you might consider actually getting one of the things that kind of, I forget what it's called, but it's basically like a little razor. A lot of like weightlifters use it to get the calluses down. Start with that so you can kind of expose where the problem is. And then if you are getting rubbing frequently in the same area, take a look at what you're doing. I really recommend wool socks, any kind of a runner's lube or Vaseline that you're going to make sure you're applying every single time you go out for, I would say, anything longer than an hour and a half. And if your shoes are not fitting right, you're always going to run into this problem. So the wider, the better, in my opinion, at least just that's been my experience. And the longer you're running for, you want to give your feet space to spread. So usually people are wearing shoes that are too small. I've come to find it again and again and again. I had a guy tell me one time he goes like a size and a half up from his street shoe. That's extreme, but give yourself space to land in that shoe, especially when your feet are swelling. But I really do recommend shaving down the callus a little bit and then figuring out where the blister's coming from and just airing it out as much as you can. Okay. All right. We have so many people in here. Great. So it says, I file it down. I use nut butter and run in ultras with the big toe box. Sometimes I wrap it with tape or use silicone toe cover. Yeah, that's great. It sounds like you have a system. Maybe this was just kind of a one-off thing. Hopefully it gets better though. Blisters suck. Okay. Hello, planning on doing my first 50K this year. I have knee issues and have been told my distance marathon days are over by several doctors. Is it okay to incorporate walking into training, and how? Mary asked this question. That's a really good question. And I can't believe how many people ask if walking's okay, because it's just such a staple part of going long. And we get in our heads about, oh, we're not a runner if we walk. I remember when I first started running, I was convinced that any break I took, any walk break I did, all of a sudden that whole run didn't count. I'm talking like, even if I was going to go out and do an hour of running, if I walked for 10 seconds, I would completely scrap the whole thing in my mind and think it didn't count. That is so stupid. And honestly, it just keeps setting us back. It's the same way in like life when we're striving for perfection and everything. And I deal with this a lot. Why nothing can count unless it perfectly works out the way we want it to. And that's just not how life works. So we have to realize that it's all a progress thing. So the big picture, when we zoom out, we talked about this last time, are we headed in the direction we want to be headed in? And so if you're trying to come back and train for this 50K, I don't know the extent to which your knee issues are. So I don't know what kind of injury we're talking about here, but I do have experience with a lot of doctors telling me, oh, just rest it for this time, or you can't run anymore, or that. And I think it's very easy for them to do that because they're pretty sure, obviously, it won't add to the problem if you're not going to be doing that activity again. But they missed the whole part where you didn't get to run anymore. And one of your favorite things is taken away. So I would definitely incorporate walking, and I would start with easy, getting a feel for what your effort levels feel like. So easy, medium, and hard. Run walk strategies. So if you can run for 2 minutes easy, and then you need to walk down for 1 minute just to catch your breath, or if you're really coming back from being out of shape, giving yourself at least 3 minutes of a walk, back to a run, maybe for 1. And then that can be your kind of shorter run. But for something longer, I would just get focused on your time on feet. So 30 or 45 minutes of just being on your feet, moving forward. Start with a good hike, maybe some rolling hills in there, or on the treadmill. I know a lot of us are in winter and darkness and stuff. But there are ways to come back from knee issues. Obviously, strength work is a big one, and focusing on those individual legs. So you're not just doing what you've always done and hoping it won't hurt that day. You really want to break things down. Single leg squats, a lot of posterior work, getting those single leg deadlifts, some calf raises on each side, but really starting to, train your legs to really be there for you in this new way, given the injuries. So she says, arthritis, patella tendonitis, and missing cartilage in the knee, bone on bone. So yeah, obviously a doctor is going to need to clear you for a lot of this. This is extreme stuff, but start with some walking and just see what kind of pain and feedback you're getting, especially with your arthritis stuff. All the research I've ever done said to really go off of feeling what you can handle and not pushing it over the limit the same way. I know a lot of us, if you follow this channel, are very like Goggins-esque, push it to the limit, all that. But we can't do that all the time, obviously. And for longevity and actually getting to a race start line, we need to be smart. So focus on time on feet, maybe a little bit of run walk to see where aerobically you are, and then mix those things up to create a plan. Okay, lots of questions. I'm so excited to have you guys here. It's fun having a bigger group. Okay, covering a few more here. So Chris says, during my marathon last month, around mile 8 or so, I started getting sharp pain in my left anterior medial knee, and it lasted most of the rest of the race. Any tips to reduce or prevent that pain? So typically anything that happens once, maybe this obviously continued on after the race, I typically draw back to something being different or tight. Now, the area that usually hurts is not really the area responsible. A lot of us know that, but something that happens in a race a lot of times is due to nerves creating new environments for our body. So I've run really differently in some races, weirdly. I either was going faster or I was caught up in other things around and I was sloppier in my form, or I was just trying new things. That's kind of like, it's weird, but race days, we're a different person. We're responding to adrenaline. We're responding to all the goals we've set for ourselves, a lot of reflection on what our past training was and if we got here okay. I wouldn't stress out too much about that. I would focus on really, really quality foam rolling in the adductor, so that inner thigh. IT band not directly on it, but maybe working the outer hip and then lower on the quad as well, but putting pressure on the spot and then moving against that pressure spot. So not necessarily rolling, but planting that spot on it and flexing and extending. Some good massage will kind of loosen things up, and then also just working on some good strength work as well. That should help. Okay. Tom says, what's your alternative to caffeine? I just lost the message. Oh, running alertness. That is a good question. I am a big caffeine person. So I suppose some deep breathing might actually help, create some sort of sense of alertness. I know that I feel a little bit more clear-minded when I really focus on that deep nose breathing. So I always talk about it. Big inhale, fill it up, blow it out, maybe 5 deep breaths. Caffeine is also kind of a thing that for some people doesn't really affect them much at all, but running alertness, like when you're in mid run and something that's really long, you just need some sort of a stimulant. So sometimes listening to something, if you're at an aid station, talking to somebody, have them ask questions. I've had that before where I have, a crew and I say, can you guys make sure I'm like thinking straight? Ask me about the weather, ask me about things like that. And that'll also kind of just like pick up back your, receptors. You're just a little bit more aware of what's going on. It's easy to sort of tune that out. As far as other like powders and pills and stuff like that, like not really. I wouldn't be too sure. Okay, let's keep going here. Is there a suggested time spacing for core work before or after cycling or running? Have tried doing it right after run and ended up with something going out, ending up at the chiropractor. So really important to know that anything you're going to double up on, so running with strength, you're doing 2 workouts in a day, anything like that. If you're doing something wrong out of fatigue, you need to be aware of when that breaks down. And so I realized that a lot of people in the form department maybe have seen what they think is right, but when they get tired, it becomes too exhausting to care to look anymore. So that's the biggest thing. And I always say just slow it down and take more breaks than you think to make sure that every rep you do is actually right. There's no good or bad time to do strength before or after, and that includes core work. But if you're going to do it after, especially with anything lying on your back, you really want to make sure that low back is tight to the ground, because otherwise you're arched up, and anything you're working, if the legs are lowering or anything, tends to be hip flexor, even constrain a little bit of the back. It sounds like chiropractor, maybe the back was involved. Quality, you're just looking for quality. So if you're tired, you want to be more aware that you're probably going to do something wrong just out of fatigue. So just be careful with that. Now, if you're doing it before, definitely still stretch before you get that stuff in. Again, hip flexors can be tight if you're coming from work or seated, or driving or sleeping. You want to make sure that your body's primed and ready to go, even though core work is slower. It can't necessarily serve as your warm up for your run. So always start with some good planks. That'll get you kind of in the zone, the whole body working. And then if you want to do something more dynamic, do it. Okay. Sharon says, I'm planning on joining a gym for the winter. I haven't ran in a treadmill close to 2 years. Any good tips to start running on a treadmill again? Will treadmill running help my outdoor runs? Okay, this is a great question. And I have so many of you guys that are starting to morph into that indoor running for the winter. I know how miserable it can be. I love interval work on the treadmill, and I think it's a really good place to practice difficult things. I say this not to, change your routine or your fitness over the winter, but more to get you thinking in the headspace of, if I do some tough things, even in interval short style now, that is going to help overall my aerobic base, so that when I get back out there, I'm feeling like the whole thing has been lifted. So my whole level of athleticism is just a little bit lifted, because now I have some extra hill work under my belt. That's what I'm mostly referring to. Maybe some speed work. And overall, I'm not just slogging along the same speed and route I always do. So this is a really good time to mix things up and add a little bit of variety to your routine. And it doesn't need to be crazy. You don't need to get on there now, some of you training for a long race, yes, you want to be getting the time on your feet. But if you're not, I would use this time to do 10 rounds of a 30-second hill run, set at an 8% incline, really working on pushing your hips forward, big arm swing, small steps, recovering in between, trying to hit the same, distance every single time on that 30 seconds. You can do a little bit longer if you want. Other things you can do: run a little bit on the treadmill, hop off, do some squats, do some push-ups, make it a little strength routine. I do that a lot during the winter. There's a gym in my building, and if I haven't gotten something in, I've been working all day or whatever, I just go down there and I set 30-minute clock. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do, this many rounds, and I just get on and off like that. You can also work on speed this way too, and really good place to look at how you're running is the treadmill. So there's pretty much only the one thing to look at. You look down. You can even film yourself on the treadmill from the side, see what your feet are doing individually, and just use it as an opportunity for some research. But you don't need to go do 2 hours on the treadmill if it's going to be absolute misery to you. Mixing things up, adding some rolling hills, or just goals for the workout will help. Okay. Again, guys, if you're joining us, thank you for coming. Normally this is Patreon only. Today I'm opening up to everybody on the channel. So we're just going through questions and stuff. I'm here for 30 minutes total. So we've got another 12 or 13 minutes to answer your questions. All right. Let's see. Talking about the benefits of strength training. It sounds like everyone's had good experience with that. Let's see. Vance says, hello, Holly. I work week on, week off, 10 to 15 hours. I run 3 times on my days off. I don't feel like I'm making progress. Am I wasting my time for progress, i.e. mileage? Definitely not wasting your time. I guess I would say that have some perspective for your goals. So if you're trying to run as far as you possibly can one day, I don't know if you have a race distance in mind or whatever, but I would say that if you only have 3 times a week to run, make sure each of these individual days has a purpose, and they shouldn't all be the same. So all the clients that I work with individually, we do a hill workout, a tempo, and a distance run. even if you don't have a ton of time on those off days, because you have other things you have to get done or whatever, still have those goals in mind. So even if it's not those categories, maybe, one can definitely be for working on speed in some sort of an interval work way. One can be just go out for as long as you possibly have that day and really get the time on feet. And then the other one could be something that's a little bit more intentional relative to what you're going to be doing. So if you are trying to go do a long trail race at some point or something like that, do some hill work or practice some downhills, maybe just a form day where you just get yourself really dialed, set the distance, and the tempo day feels super easy. Just have intention, I would say. And I am definitely a telling story that you do not need to be pounding the pavement for 100 miles a week to be an ultra runner. Most of my training happens in a very hybrid way. I don't typically work out. So, I do 2-a-days, but typically any one workout besides maybe one long run, everything else is within an hour to 2 hours. So you can get a lot done. You just need to be consistent and really take care of your body as well in between. So if you are working long hours and stuff like that, just as much as you can foam roll, stretch, take care of yourself, get good sleep, and really make the most of those 3 days. You can do anything you want. Okay. Robert says, I like how you focus on both strength training and running cardio to balance overall fitness. Any advice for an aging athlete 50 plus on how to incorporate both for long-term health? Similar to what I was just kind of talking about, but I think the more you embrace change and mixing things up, the better your experience will be, is what I've found. Whenever I've gotten on a really consistent Mondays, I do this, Tuesdays, I do this, I get very bored. And I also just feel that my body knows what's coming. And it's weird. It's like I anticipate how hard I'll work in that thing that day. A really good example is yesterday I went and did an F45 class. And if you guys don't know what that is, it's like a circuit style workout. You do different stations for different periods of time, all different movements, and it changes every day. But it's really cool because everyone in the world at an F45 gym does the same workout on that day. We did this crazy workout. It was all these leg movements. It was really humid. I was absolutely dying. And it reminded me how different things can make me feel. So a big reason that I blend strength and running, or cardio in general, together is because I like surprising myself in a good or bad way. Yesterday was kind of a bad way. I was kind of shocked at how tired I was, but good way to start is just start this week and say 2 days, I'm going to focus on my cardio, whether that's a type of a run. So that could be something like fartlek style. I'm going to go run for speed, run to that light post, walk to the next stop sign, etc. And the other run, I'm going to just go out for an hour, run, walk, or run it nice, easy. I can listen to a podcast, whatever. 2 of the other days, I'm going to do strength in either my version of a workout. So I like to do 3 to 4 movements in a circuit, 3 rounds, maybe up to 5 rounds with a good 2-minute rest between, depending on what you're doing. And that can be weighted or unweighted. And then maybe the second strength workout is some sort of a class. At the local gym, you can do a CrossFit class, F45, obviously something you feel comfortable in the environment in. But these types of things all together make you really confident that you can try and do anything. And I know we're talking about 50 plus, but really I have met so many different people, a whole range of ages that can accomplish anything I'm mentioning here. And it's not a matter of, this class is too hard for you. It's just knowing yourself well enough to adjust things. And one of my clients I work with in person right now, she's like 65, 66. And we do like really tough strength workouts. And I always change it up on her to make sure she knows her body well enough to adjust to whatever we're doing versus just autopilot. So that's why I really enjoy that too. And I can see her getting stronger and way more stable and balanced. She was jumping up on a Bosu ball today and looked like a normal athlete of any age, really. So, okay, guys, keep dropping your questions here. We have another good 6 minutes here, so we'll keep talking. Let's see. Doreen says, what do you think of the elliptical machine? There's one where I live. I can use it freely and thinking it could be great cross-training and recovery for my current injury illness. I think an elliptical is definitely great for movement. I think it adds to fitness? Depending on where you're starting from, maybe it could in the beginning. I think it's great as a cross-training and recovering from an injury because it is lower impact. Careful on the elliptical, though, that it doesn't become a replacement for something that is more intense. So I've had a lot of people friends of mine and stuff that I've seen kind of sub that in. Obviously, it feels better than running. Running is really hard. And there's a reason we, seek out things that are less difficult because it feels better to us. So just have some intention again behind it. This sounds like it would be for recovery and just mixing in with the running and the other stuff and strength work. So that sounds awesome. And I think especially for like an active recovery day, that's a really good option. Okay. Oh, I get this question a lot, so I'm going to answer it. Your thoughts on heart rate zone training? Oh, Jeff's here. Hey, Jeff. Jeff was the video editor I worked with. He actually worked on something on my channel as well, but when I worked at Run Experience. So, okay. So heart rate training. I am not a big heart rate training person, but let me tell you why. Number one, you guys know I work out and race and everything for pleasure and my own fulfillment. So my dancing days, my ballet days are behind me. The competitive edge, it's not that it's gone, it's that I'm not interested in it anymore. So I work out for myself. I definitely have that internal battle with I want to keep signing up for things that are difficult just because they're challenging for me, but I'm not trying to execute certain paces and certain PRs every single time I go do something. In fact, I'm usually just looking for a good day out there. All that being said, heart rate training is important. It definitely gives us good indicators of how hard we're pushing, obviously. But I do want to mention that the biggest thing I see is a lot of people go off their watch, whether it's their Garmin, Coros, Apple Watch. And if you're not using a heart rate strap that you know and trust, that is typically something I would just take with a grain of salt. Mine is very inaccurate all the time. So first and foremost, if you are going really off of that for heart rate training zones for that workout, make sure that you're working with something that's accurate. Second thing, create more zones in your head of how hard things feel to you that day. And I think that's mostly where I see the best results with my clients is just you're not going to be the same person every single day. So many factors go into how we feel: sleep, eating, stress, how our body feels. Are we dealing with chronic pain? What are we doing? All those things add to it. So for example, great example of what I was saying yesterday on the F45 class, and I was dying, really humid in there, lots of leg exercises all back to back. And quite honestly, I've had a stressful week just wrapping loose ends up before I go on this trip. So all those combined, my heart rate was very, very high. But on a day where I got a bunch of sleep, it wasn't humid, it was 10 in the morning, all those things, it would have been much lower. So just factor all of that in when you are going into a day's workout. It's not usually going to pan out the exact way that you plan on. And so sometimes I see people so married to their zones that they're not, of course, there are ranges of zones, but it's sometimes really, really highly inaccurate given the other factors of that day. So mostly my opinion on that is just to make sure you have your intentions and goals, set really in order there so you know what you're doing, and you're not just going off of things people told you at one point. So I've had a lot of people who had a coach at one point say, here's your zone 1, 2, 3, etc. You're going to race in this zone. One of my clients we ran with last week, she ended up not PRing her race because she was told to stay in this zone. I think it was zone 2 the whole time, even though she felt like she could have pushed a lot harder, but they were basing it off of something else. So be really open to your effort levels changing day to day, even beginning of the day to the end of the day. And I think that will give you better results overall, at least mentally, in making progress than just being so glued to the numbers. I'm very passionate about that subject, obviously. Okay. Okay, Richard asked, do you love upper body strength or lower? I like it all. I think it's all important. I am definitely stronger in my lower half, I think, but they both have extreme benefits in running, upper body as well, just the posture. Everything just feels better when you're stronger and, overall feel like you have the ability to do a little bit more and hold up against a lot more pain or injury. Okay. Louis says, I keep getting shin splints and it's really demoralizing. Have you got any tips for dealing with shin splints? Yes, lots of people with shin splints. Start by looking at your ankles. A huge place that we're all very tight because we're all in shoes all the time is our ankles. So what happens is we end up running or landing at a certain angle over and over again based on our lack of ability to really absorb the shock with our whole foot and our whole ankle and then going all the way up the leg. So what I notice is when people are really stiff coming down, depending on what angle you're coming down at or what kind of shoes you're in, you can get a lot of pressure on the outer shins. And if you combine that with never rolling out the calves or the sides of the shins, that I think is perennials, foam rolling and really getting in there between runs, again, you're coming back shorter and tighter every single time you go back into that next run. So there's a range of things going on. My guess is you're coming down not in a way that's using the bigger muscle groups, but more in the smaller muscle groups. So people who reach out a lot, that heel strike, you are more at risk for landing harshly. I have found, especially if you're doing long distances. So if you guys can shorten those steps and pick your feet up right under the hips, you can push the hips forward. Talked about this in a lot of the videos, but you can then land right in the middle of your foot and the shock goes right up to your glutes, which are big enough to absorb it over time and really handle that many steps. So check your ankles, see if they're tight. You can do the bottom of a squat off tension, hold on to a pole and just kind of move around and see where they're at. I like to spend time at the bottom of an off tension squat to also just work through that mobility and range of motion. And then you can just really, really focus on breaking up that muscle as well. So just circling your calf on a foam roller, flexing and pointing, rolling out the sides of the shins as well. And then a little bit of extra strength. If you're doing no strength, do at the very minimum some calf raises, maybe 30 a day, just getting some extra layer of support down there on the lower legs. It gets painful and shin splints suck. Guys, that is all we have time for today. I really appreciate you guys coming and joining us today. I know we usually are just such a small group here on the Patreon. If you guys have questions about the Patreon, whatever, I'll have it linked in many of my videos and you guys can join us next time. But I hope you have a great holiday season. And for my patrons, I will see you guys again at the end of this month for our second one. Love you guys. Bye.